Hi guys, welcome to another RocketCake tutorial. In this one we will talk about the container. The container is the basic building block of the RocketCake sites. I like to put everything into containers. Containers are the basis of how we make responsive websites in RocketCake. So let's see. On the top right corner, here at the toolset, on the top here is a container. We grab it and drop it onto the working area. Here it is. By default, the size of it is 100% width. The height is auto. Let's see the background and the border. The background can be invisible, color, image, gradient, or a styled button. Let's go through it. By default it's invisible, so whatever is behind him, it shows it. Let's see, here's our web page, and the web page, if it's a color, let's say this is the web page color, then our container is invisible, the background of it is invisible, so we just see through it. The background mode can be color, so the background can be a color. By default it's white, and the transparency can be, well, right now it's 0. Let's see, 10%, 30%, 50%, 70, 90, or 100. Then we can just see through it. It's like invisible. Let's see the colors. Okay, let's set the website to white. So let's see the colors here. The colors of the container, well, it can be chosen from these default colors, or we can choose a color here, and okay, let's see this one, and then we can choose something here. We see the color of how it will be here. Okay, let's choose that. Here we are. Now the background can be an image. In that case, we can choose a background image. Okay, here is a nice lady. By default, the background covers the area, but we have choices. Okay, let's choose repeat in both directions. That's how it is. We can repeat only horizontally. We can repeat vertically. We can choose no repeat. And we can choose the alignment. Vertical alignment can be top, center, and bottom. Horizontal alignment can be left, center, and right. You can choose center, center. Usually I like it when it covers the area, and still vertical alignment can be top, center, and bottom. Horizontal alignment can be left, center, and right. Usually I like center, center, but it depends on the picture itself. The question is where is the center of the picture, where is the main part. Okay, let's go on. The background can be gradient. Here it is, gradient can begin. Okay, here it can end somewhere here. Okay, let's choose something else. Okay, that looks better. And the gradient direction can be vertical or horizontal. We can still change the transparency if we want to. And finally, the gradient, the background mode can be a styled button. Looks like that. There's the darkening factor is 100. We can change it. It's 50. It can be 0. And we can change the background color. We can play around with it. Let's go back to visible and we take a look at the border. By default it's none. And when there is no border, we just preview it and we cannot see anything. There is no border. Now the border can be solid. Okay, I just want to center it. So here we have our container with a solid border. Let it be 10, we can see it better. Then we can choose a border color. Here we are. Okay, it can be more if you like. This is still angular. It's not angular here, but in the preview we can see it is angular. Okay. Let's go back to 10. So the borders can be angular or it can be round. And here we see the border radius in pixels. Now it's 15. Okay, we can make it 50 if we like. We can make it 100 and even more. Well, let's say 300. It looks like that in RocketCake, but we preview it and it looks like that. And the corners can be round, defined for all corners. In that case, we can define every corner, all the 4 corners, one by one. By default, they are 15, so here is the top left corner. Okay, let it be 0. Top right, well, let it be 20. The bottom left, let this be 50. Bottom right, let it be 200. Well, that's how it looks. So we can choose the roundness of every corner. Now let's check if the corner can be a negative number. Let's say minus 50 on the top left. It should be like that, but it's not. Preview. No. It became angular. So the border radius cannot be a negative number. Actually, if we write a negative number here, then it destroys all the others. So these are the background and the border and the corners. So let's go to the position and the size of the container. By default, the position is normal and the size is 100% and auto. Let's change the size. Let's let it be 50%. And I want to give it a little color. Alright. Then it can be on the left side, in the middle, on the right side. On the right side. We cannot justify it. It's not a text. So the size is 50%. Now we can also assign a number to it. Okay, let's just copy it, paste it. We can say, okay, let this be 600. So this is 50%, this is 600 pixels. I write it here. .600 pixels. Now let's see how these work. Here's this slider at the right bottom, and we start to bring it to the left. What we see is that this container with the percentages moves, it changes its size as the viewport changes, but the one with the 600 pixel width does not change. In other words, we can say that this one responds to the size of the viewport, while this one does not respond. So this is the basis of making responsive websites, that our containers, the size of our container is given in percentages and not in pixels. So this one responsive, this one is non-responsive. Here it is. Preview. Let's center them and let's preview them. Is the same. Responsive, non-responsive. We can set the width of our container in percentages or in a number or in pixels. Now we can set the minimum width. If we don't want a container to be smaller than a certain size, then we can assign a minimum width to it. Okay, let's say 300. What happens? It goes down to 300 and then it stops it. It won't get smaller. And then it gets bigger. This can be good when there is a text inside. This can be good when we don't want this container containing a text, when we don't want it to be too thin. Let's see, when we say none, we don't want this, so we can stop it at, let's say, 300, and then it won't be so thin. We can give it a maximum width. This can also be good. Let's say, let it be 800. This can work with texts. Let's just see a case. Like this. And when I say I don't want a maximum width, preview it, and these lines are just too long. I don't want them to be that long, so I say maximum width should be 800. Preview. Now this is better. This is more readable. Now by default the minimum height is 150. Okay. I show it to you. Okay, we have a container here. The default height is 100. The default minimum height is 150, and it can go down to 20 actually. I can say 0, but it will be 20. Now if I say 10, if I say 20, nothing happens. I say 21, it moved a little. And we can give it a bigger minimum height if we want to. Now what we see is that our container can have a minimum width, it can have a maximum width, it can have a minimum height, but it cannot have a maximum height. Why is this? And actually we can see that we can only set the size of we can only set the width of the container, but not the height. Yes, if I say here 50%, it jumps back to auto. If I say 200, it jumps back to auto. This remains auto. And the reason is that in RocketCake, the container is dedicated to contain anything that is put into it. And it doesn't allow its height to be limited with an exact number here or with a maximum height. So if I say, I copy this and copy this, the container will contain whatever we put into it. That's why it doesn't allow us to limit its height here or with a maximum height. Now the vertical alignment of the container can be top or bottom, and this doesn't seem very relevant to me. Now what about the float? So what about the float? By default it's none. It can be left or right. Now let's see something about the float. I put an image here. Okay, let it be this. Well, let it be 20%, 30%. Okay, now If there is no float to it, then it's like a paragraph. I say let it float left, then it's on the left side and the text rounds around it. And I can see that I want to give it a margin on the right side, 20. Here it is. Now okay, I say let it float right. It's on the right side and the text is on its left side. So that's the difference. This is no floating, floating to the left, floating to the right. And finally, let's take a look at the margin and the padding of the container. I put another container here. I give it a border. Now let's see the margin. And the margin starts on the top. This is 0 and let's say let it be 50. Yeah, here it is. And it goes clockwise. 20 on the right. It doesn't show in this case. 30 at the bottom and 20 on the left. Yeah. So the margin here starts on the top and it goes clockwise, like 12 hours, 3, 6, 9. Now let's see the padding. By default it's 10 and it does the same. Starts on the top, let it be 50. Here it is. On the right, let it be 30. Here it is. At the bottom, let it be 100. Yeah. And on the left, let it be 50. So the margin is on the outside, the padding is on the inside. Now, the position can also be a free position. So the position can also be a free position, and this is the position of the top left corner compared to the top left corner of the working area. And in free position we can drag our container around. I would say this is especially good with non-responsive websites. With responsive websites we really have to be careful how we use these. We can also set the position in pixels, so let's say 100 pixels, and let's say 200 pixels. Here we are, and then we drag it around and then it's in pixels. But if we say that the position be 30% and we drag it around, these remain pixel percentages and this remains pixel. So it's quite interesting. But to be honest, I never use free position with containers, or almost never. So normally I use the normal position. Well, that was very basic, but I hope you learned some tips from this little tutorial. If so, I am happy. Have a beautiful day. God bless you. Bye bye.